Down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am super excited for tonight. Let me explain a little tiny bit. First of all, 3 Chevy over on Rumble said, when he thinks I drink. So guess what? 3 Chevy, buddy, let me tell you something. You must be drunk a lot because I do a lot of thinking, okay? I'm sorry. I just had to throw that out there because you were up there. All right. So I am excited, and let me explain why. Right before, a couple of hours before I came on the broadcast, a couple hours before now, I hit a milestone on Facebook. That's right. I have 400 of you folks who have decided to follow my social media account on Facebook. I am humbled. I am honored. It is amazing to see that. And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for following me. Apparently, I am bringing something to you. And, that is my whole goal, is to make sure that I bring something to you. Now, the other thing that happened, 2 other things happened, but one in particular, apparently I have hit a milestone as well in the fact that I can now receive stars. But the challenge with that, of course, is that until I get 1,000 subscribers, I actually can't take advantage of those stars. So if you send me stars, I don't know what happens if they just kind of sit into an account or whatever. I mean, I don't know. But honestly, I appreciate the idea behind it. And so that is going to be one of my goals in the coming year, is to get 1,000 subscribers over on Facebook. I also am I'm kind of sitting at 450 on Rumble, and I'm kind of hanging there. But I also noticed over on Twitch, which is my new transmission platform that I just started, I've got 10 followers over there. So obviously, the word is getting out. The word is getting out about everything that is going on here on the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And so I have nobody else but you folks to thank for that, because following my social media, forwarding my shows, my videos, commenting, getting likes, all of these other things is just absolutely wonderful. I can't thank you enough. This started out as sort of a pet project and just give it a try, and you guys have expanded it, made it into something, I think, something worth a lot. Not only to me, but also, hopefully, I bring it to you. I have a question. There was a question about what a star is. Well, basically, buddy, it's kind of like a Rumble, or not a Rumble rant on Rumble. Essentially, what you do is you purchase stars, and then you donate those stars. You donate those stars, or you send those stars to people, and then that's basically like tipping your waiter, essentially, but tipping your favorite broadcaster or content creator, whatever you want to call them. And that's my understanding of what it is. And Rumble rants, you can do that in the Rumble. I don't know if you can do it within the app. I've noticed that the app has a couple different things that, it changes depending upon whether you're on iOS or Android or whatever. But I know that you can do Rumble rants on the desktop version of Rumble, meaning that you're going to it on the, on the regular browser page or whatever. You can do them there. And believe me, I appreciate every single one of you. Whenever I see a donation or something like that through Rumble Rants or anywhere else, I see it through purchases of things out of my store, things from the Institute on the Constitution, who I'm affiliated with, and I'll get to them in just a moment. All of those people, I do appreciate every single one that comes in. I may not say it all the time, but believe me, every single one of all of you, my viewers and subscribers, are on the top of my list every single time I see it. And I think of you all the time. I think of you guys often. Speaking of thinking of all of you and everything else, I found out in the congratulatory comments of my 400th subscriber on Facebook, I found out that there is a young man, a 12-year-old young man, who has chosen to follow and watch and learn from both Mark K and yours truly. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, I've dealt with young people all the time. I've coached soccer. Obviously, I've raised my son. He is 21 now. And so I'm just telling you right now, I am so honored to have a young individual who has decided to look toward this program in order to learn and entertain. Obviously, the adults, I know that I cater to typically a more mature audience level. So I'm just going to call it. I mean, that young man, he is my youngest follower, subscriber, listener, whatever. He is my youngest fan, and I can't really give him a shout out because, unfortunately, I'm not in the position necessarily. First of all, I don't know his name, but second of all, I don't know if I really would want to shout him out on this type of a platform. But hey, young man, 12 years old, you guys are the future. You guys are the future for us, and I'm just gonna tell you, when we're all gone, or sitting in our freaking rocking chairs on the front porch, sipping whiskey, we're going to be looking to you to be the next generation to come up. And this is a pivotal time. You may not realize it because of your age, but this is a pivotal time. It's kind of like, my growing up during the 80s. I was born in the early 70s, so growing up during the 80s, it was a pivotal time with the Cold War and Russia. This is now a pivotal time here in our country, given what is going on for everything today. And toward that end, I'm going to tell you, I have a couple of things tonight to talk about in specifics with regards to, the Twitter dump number 6 happened yesterday. And then there was also something that popped that I don't think a lot of people noticed. Tucker Carlson did, and he actually got an interesting question answered on his broadcast, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And I also have a very small update on Carrie Lake and her trial, plus a few other things. And I have a question for Whiskey tonight submitted by our buddy Weiser. So I'm going to get to all of that here in just a second. But before I do, let me go ahead and give one of my affiliates a little bit of airtime here. So let me go ahead and talk about the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course materials and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online. to get great content about and to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's IOTC.whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. This thing is great. It is Saddleback leather. It's about a eighth of an inch or so. The paper is water resistant, and check that binding out. It is actually a stitched binding that goes all the way through the entire book. They come with a 100 year guarantee against defects in materials and workmanship. And definitely go. By the way, dad of that young man, I foresee the possibility of maybe a stocking stuffer if you can get it in time. But if not, give it to him afterward. This is a great hand-me-down for that. And so I would appreciate it, and I'm sure he would appreciate it too, seeing that he sounds like he wants to learn about a Constitution and America. So go ahead and do that. All right. Now, okay. Apparently my age comment has gotten the Rumble chat going like nut and gangbusters, trying to get everybody's ages in. I won't bother putting any of them up, but anyway, that is quite interesting, guys. I didn't mean for you to take that mature comment, wrong per se. All right. So let's move on to the next thing, which is, what am I drinking tonight? Well, tonight I'm actually drinking something new. So for all of you that may or may not know, we are getting closer to the holidays. So no, Amy, I did not. I called you mature. Okay, that's not old. That's mature. I didn't call you old. Anyway, let me go back to where I was going. So, all of you, speaking of old, my mother happens to be in town because it's the holidays. And one of the things that she did last year, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but I talked a short amount of it on the program. And in fact, I've got a story tonight with that deals with her as well. But she went over to Ireland, and one of the things that she did while she was over there was visit the one of the original Jameson distilleries. Now, she kept telling me that she couldn't bring anything back. Now, I kept telling her, I was like, hey, you know what? I need to, I would love to get a bottle of, say, Black Barrel or something like that. Well, she kept telling me she couldn't bring it back. She couldn't bring it back. And now she brought me this. She gave this to me. You can see this bottle right over here that's empty. It's the Crested Jameson. I have not tasted this one yet, and I have not tasted the stout one, this one right here. These other two I have. Obviously, the Black Barrel is one of my favorites. This is the regular Jameson, but there's a stout version here as well, which if I get through the Crested first, I will end up with, having to go to the other one, because obviously these are smaller shots. But hey, I wanted to show you this because of the fact that Jameson was actually thinking when they did this. If you look at this, this is cardboard, okay? But here in America or other places, it would have been where I would have had to rip this thing up in order to get the bottles out. Well, check this little feature out. These guys were thinking, I'm telling you, these guys or gals, whoever did this, were thinking. They put a button on it and a flip top. See how you can see where the bottles sit? But check that out. And they made it so that you can keep the bottles after you drink them and put them back and snap it all back together, and it's all nice and pretty again. So I am impressed with that. That was actually pretty cool. And I'll admit it. It doesn't take much to impress me. Anyway, so yeah, but that was pretty cool having that little button. I was sitting there going, oh man, that just really sucks. I'd have to rip this thing apart and everything else. Nope. They put in a button for me. So that is what I'm drinking. I'm drinking the Jameson Crested. This is my first taste of it right here live on the air. Let's see what this... Well, it doesn't really have... I mean, it's got a scent, but nothing different than what I can recall from the others. But let me go ahead and get this taste. Ooh, I like that. That is good. That's nice and smooth. No real bite afterward. You can feel it going down, but obviously that's whiskey for you. You feel whiskey going down, but no really strong like overflowing taste. But yeah. Okay, I may have to see if I can find that somewhere in my local bars or whatever. All right. Let's move on to the next item on the list, which is On This Day in American History. And for tonight we're going to be talking about the very famous first flight of Orville and Wilbur Wright. And of course, I keep forgetting to do this, but this is coming from the American Patriots Almanac. This is a book put out by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. It is an awesome book. It gives you 365 days of little stories and then a whole bunch of other things in between that are facts about our wonderful country. Great book. If you might even be able to get this as a gift down at the local bookstore or whatever. And hand it out. That is absolutely awesome. Okay, so December 17th, the first flight, 12 seconds. That's how long the world's first airplane flight lasted on December 17th, 1903, above the windswept dunes of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Orville Wright was at the controls of the flimsy craft. He flew 120 feet. Orville and his brother Wilbur had been interested in flight since childhood when their father had given them a little toy helicopter powered by a rubber band. We built a number of copies of the toy which flew successfully, Orville later remembered. But when we undertook to build the toy on a much larger scale, it failed to work so well. As young men, the Wright brothers went into business making and fixing bicycles in Dayton, Ohio, but they never forgot their dream of flying. They began building gliders, making hundreds of test flights, unmanned and manned. They chose Kitty Hawk for their trials because of its strong, steady winds. Dissatisfied with their results, they used an old wash tub, a fan, and a wooden box to construct a wind tunnel. They experimented with model wings and redesigned their glider. Then they built a gasoline engine to mount on the biplane. All along the way, they heard plenty of cracks about how they were wasting their time. One of the nation's leading scientists had shown by unassailable logic that human flight was impossible. So, on a frigid December morning at Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers shook hands. Orville climbed into place, moved a lever that set the plane in motion, and did the impossible. It took a while for the world to notice the achievement, but the handful of people who witnessed that first leap into the air knew what it meant. They had done it. They had done it. Damned if it ain't flew, one local exclaimed. The age of flight had begun. And that happened on today's date, December 17th. On this day in American history. That is, and I know a lot of people growing up, may have heard that. That is the innovation and the pioneering spirit that made this country, okay? That made this country into what it is today. Into what it is today. All right. Looks like Buddy's dinger is stuck. Sorry, he's repeating, got a bunch of repeating messages over on Rumble. It does that occasionally. About the only fix, I think, is to log out and log back in, or maybe just refresh the page. I don't know. I haven't had that problem necessarily, so I can't really say one way or the other. All right. So let's move on. Obviously, the Twitter files dump, it's starting to extend itself out, just a little bit. But I got to be honest with you. Every single dump, there's just like an additional little extra in it. And this last dump, I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of details. It's been a couple of days already, or at least 18 hours already. Pretty much everybody's already knowing about it. But the point is that this last Twitter dump actually reveals active participation between the FBI and internal emails to Twitter and from Twitter. So realistically, what was being suggested by the earlier Twitter dumps has now been confirmed, that the FBI, in particular, the FBI and maybe a few other organizations as well, because obviously we've only seen a small part of what's going on. But the FBI went ahead and sent a whole bunch of emails and kept telling Twitter employees, and they did this through various channels, by the way, reportedly. And so they obviously were doing things and telling people to, shut these people down. And the funny thing about it is some of the accounts that they were doing, they were telling people who were just, it was sarcastic. It was memes. It was things about, like, there was one account that they went and said that person had to get either shut down or banned or looked at or whatever. I don't know what it was, but there was one person on there who said something like, hey, I want to tell all the Republicans out there to vote on Wednesday, December 9th. And obviously that was a joke. I mean, seriously, folks, they had apparently 80 agents that were looking online for election issues. And the sad thing about this entire thing, and by the way, let me go ahead and pop this up. So this is the article in the Post Millenial that outlines and actually lists the Matt Taibbi release. And this is, seriously, this is just getting worse and worse by the day. And this is just for Twitter. Can you imagine what Facebook looks like, or Google? They all sat at the same meeting. They were all a part of the same, communiques between the ODNI, the FBI, the DHS, all of these other government entities. And even the thing about, if you recall a couple of episodes ago, I talked about Elvis Chan, and I even read some of parts of his testimony in the Missouri and Louisiana versus the United States case, which is talking about censorship, which, by the way, I did catch a tweet that came out from the Missouri AG, who basically said, hey, FBI, or something along these lines. Hey, FBI, we're going to be looking to talk to you. So this is coming out in terms of in the public sphere, and this is going to be incredibly interesting to see with regards to the that particular trial, which is going on right now in federal court, federal circuit court, I believe. And so that's going to be interesting to watch and see how that changes and develops, because that original case, again, was, just to remind everybody, was originally about COVID only. And now they may be able to actually expand it a lot farther than that. And then you also have, people like Real James Woods, who honestly, he probably has a good bit of money and certainly some time on his hands to go after these people. Same thing with Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino was shadow banned. Now, Ben Shapiro was talking about on his podcast that, yeah, he saw the signs and he actually was on a list as well somewhere. So, Honestly, it's going to be interesting to watch this entire thing unfold. But again, the more that Elon releases through Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss, and God, I can't remember the other reporter, but the more that he releases, the more that we see the inept and corrupt situation for this particular case. And, again, this is in the Post-Millennial. It actually lists a bunch of the Twitter files, but even Twitter files, the Twitter files themselves, this article came out in the Epoch Times. This particular article is talking about the Twitter file shows the deep state went deeper than just Twitter collusion. And yeah, so this one here, it talks about how, it's Michael Schellenberger is the other guy, the other person. And they're talking about it being even further where the FBI was actually acting, where Twitter was actually acting as a subsidiary to the FBI in terms of taking this stuff down. Now, this article, they flagged accounts. They would suspend accounts. In fact, 3 of the 4 flagged accounts that Matt Taibbi calls out were actually suspended. And the one that was spared was sometimes posting anti-Trump and blue-leaning content. Now, I'm sorry, you have 4 accounts and only one was actually doing that occasionally, and that one is the one that got spared being suspended. But anyway, so apparently Twitter was acting as if it was an arm to the FBI. This is not anything new. We've already been talking about that and so on and so forth. However, here's another thing that was sort of interesting. As a part of the dump, the FBI was actually more so than just going one direction and saying, hey, you guys might want to check into this account or you might want to check into this post and take it off for misinformation, election misinformation. The FBI was actually saying, hey, guys, Twitter, buddy, pal, what do you know about this person? What kinds of things do you have in your files on this individual? Now, the inquiry about it and just asking questions about somebody is kind of, well, I mean, let's just face it. It's a little suspect, but it's not necessarily, out of the realm of possibility. I mean, the FBI can go around and ask questions, and if somebody volunteers the information, that's perfectly fine. However, when you start going and collecting personal data on an individual and then pass that personal data onto a federal agency, when you're asked specifically about that personal data, that starts to be getting into the Fourth Amendment violations. Okay? Because we are, as American people, supposed to be secure within our papers and our persons and our facts. And one of those happens to be our personal information, which is part of the reason why Elon was pissed off and did what I think anybody who was pissed would do, and kicked off a bunch of journalists. I use that term loosely. Journalists who copied and pasted and, linked to a location finder for his plane, which, by the way, we don't really know 100% how that individual who was tracking his plane fully got the information. But according to Elon, he takes great lengths to keep his plane and his tail numbers and stuff like that private, for obvious reasons. I mean, when you're the richest man in the world, there's certain risks that are involved with that. So the funny thing after that happened was the entire Twitterverse got all pissed off because these accounts were banned for, apparently, according to these folks, seemingly no reason. That, of course, was a lie. They actually, what they were doing is they were doxing. And by doxing, I mean the general sense. If you walked up and asked somebody on the street, what does doxing mean? they would probably answer, well, you're taking somebody's private information and you're putting it out there online. And that pretty much is kind of what was happening, especially with Elon's jet and Elon's active on the spot, on the minute location, which caused a avid, I won't say follower, but an avid idiot to go and like assault the car that had Elon's son in it. Now, to be honest, I'm actually kind of surprised that the person who did that is still breathing. But that being said, he is. So now there's some question as to, obviously there's reasons why things like, I don't know, the president's itinerary is kept secret, as an example. That's a high value target. You would think that Elon would be a high value target as well. So I don't necessarily blame Elon per se for doing what he did. I mean, granted, you could say that it was within the free speech rights of a person to go ahead and post that. But, again, as with any of our rights, you also have to go with the mindset of just because you can doesn't mean you should. And the argument commonly used in terms of free speech is, well, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Technically, you can. You can yell fire in a crowded theater. That falls under free speech. However, what you can't do is you can't claim that the resulting chaos and everything else that comes from you saying that is you are absolved from any wrongdoing or responsibility for that. And that's part of where the difference comes into play. Okay. So just because you can say it, you have to have the brains and the understanding that would be really stupid to say that. And yes, Music Man, rights versus responsibility, you're correct. But the thing about it is that this dump is actually starting to show more of the symbiotic relationship that at least the FBI and Twitter had in terms of violating its users' information, its users' right to privacy, its users' right to be secure in their persons. I mean, they went and signed up for an account. Now, granted, you can make the argument, just like with those little, key fobs and crap like that you get from the grocery store, that all of that information, you willingly gave it up. However, at the same time, though, just like other banks and information, data trackers, things like that, usually they anonymize the stuff before they pass it on to other places, or at least you would certainly hope so. The fact of the matter is, if you go back and listen to my broadcast on privacy and how it's a fallacy anymore, we're all being tracked. I mean, we all carry a cell phone. That's automatically a tracker. The carriers, they all have our location. They know exactly where we are. So on and so forth. I mean, even I could go and for my kids, I mean, I could contact the carrier and say, hey, I own this phone. Yeah, it's one of my kids that's carrying it, but I own the phone. So can you tell me exactly where it is located right now? And they have programs and things that you can do to opt in to some of those things. So, the real thing is, the fight over the free speech is going to be the question. And I seriously think that this is actually going to get incorporated into, it's going to be incorporated into the Missouri and Louisiana versus the U.S. case. I would not be surprised if other cases pop up out of this. Now, Jay, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going to mincemeat your name, but Rabarzik, what did I not get correct? What is not protected speech? What I'm guessing that probably had something to do with me calling fire, but I'm not certain about that. That's my guess, but I'll wait for Jay. I mean, Jay, hopefully will comment back in the comments and let me know. But the thing about it is that, we're going to see this, and this is just going to get worse and worse for the FBI, as if we didn't already know. I mean, the FBI has been going after conservatives. The DHS has been going after conservatives. The Department of Justice put out that memo saying that, people, or the FBI in particular, but the Department of Justice put out the memo that people who are standing up in school board meetings are to be considered domestic terrorists. DHS is saying that domestic terrorism is the number one priority or the number one risk against Americans and things like that. So, this is the problem that we have with that. And actually, Jay, I would like you to find me a statute that actually states that, because unfortunately that is a misnomer. People have, and there are, at one time, you are correct. At one time, the Supreme Court did make that statement, but it was also rolled back. So, that's the key, though, is that yelling it is not the problem. It's the resulting chaos and everything that happens beyond it, that ends up being into the issue. So anyway, all right. So that's kind of the thing that's going on. I mean, as far as the Twitter thing goes, I'm sure there's going to be more. There's obviously going to be some other issues, and coming out of this too, even if it doesn't go into the court cases, Republicans apparently have kind of talked about after they see the files, file number 6 reveals that the FBI flagged users and tweets. There's some Republicans that are coming out and saying that Twitter will have a lot to answer for. Twitter and the FBI in particular will have a lot to answer for. I can only hope that that's the case. For it, that is really going to happen, that something is going to become of all this. And I'll be honest with you too. This is seriously a bigger thing than even Watergate. I mean, Watergate was bad. You had a potential of a president in particular knowing about and condoning the break-in of his political rival. But this is nothing. This is way bigger than that. Way bigger than that. All right, Amy, I see it. I see your question. I'll get to that hopefully toward the end of the program. Okay. So just so you're aware. All right. So let's move on a little bit. We've had our wonderful friends at the January 6th committee. Adam Kinzinger in particular has popped up his, I'll consider it his ugly head, but he's popped up. He's coughed up something here. With regards to January 6th. Then apparently they are expected to vote this Monday. Let me make sure. Yeah, because this is the 16th was when this came out. So this is an article in the Washington Examiner. And this particular article talks about how they're expected to vote on next Monday whether or not to issue criminal referrals for former President Trump. On 3 different charges, apparently. Now, keep in mind the 3 different charges that they list, okay? The 3 different charges that they list are not all-inclusive. There is suggestion that there's going to be more that's coming out. However, these are the charges that they are considering sending over to the DOJ. Insurrection, obstruction of an official proceeding, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government. And that's according to 2 anonymous sources that told Politico. Okay. Now, first of all, I just want to point out that in Twitter dump number 5, the conversation about insurrection or inciting violence within Twitter kind of showed that he didn't violate their terms of service, which, by the way, they're violating their terms of service is much of a lower hurdle to get across than the whole trying to prove that the man actually did an insurrection. Okay. But the other thing is the whole purpose of this January 6th committee, of course, was to try and get rid of Trump's opportunity to be able to run for president a second time, which he has already announced. The thing about it is that once again, even if they were to get him on obstruction or conspiracy to defraud, those guys don't count in the high crimes and misdemeanors category. So realistically, what they really, really need, if they were going to do this and successfully do this, has to deal with the insurrection portion of it. That they would have to prove that Donald Trump, beyond a shadow of a doubt, coordinated, funded, did something to create this quote unquote insurrection. And, again, I'm going to tell you the January 6th committee, it's a big dud. It was an overspending of a whole bunch of stuff, money, took up everybody's time. It's a big, big nothing burger. And so these are these in all these different places and stuff like that with January 6th is just, it's going nowhere. They're once again trying to smear Donald Trump in the hopes that in the public eye, he is not going to make it. Now, I will tell you this much, considering Trump's announcement considering his announcement here recently, his big, huge announcement, personally, I think that Trump is Trump's worst enemy. If he would just stop doing the stupid shit, and what I'm talking about, and I'm sorry about that cuss word, but what I'm talking about is the NFT. I mean, yes, it raised him money, okay, but let's get real here. He made himself into a trading card and then used that to announce as his big reveal. I don't know what the heck he's thinking. I actually think that his narcissism took over. And so, yeah, that I just don't understand where the man is coming from. He is a great businessman. He has some positive ideas, which, by the way, he made an announcement later on that same day when he announced that NFT thing. And he made an announcement that same day, which outlined his plan for going after the people within government who colluded with Twitter outside of like all of the outside of all the legal stuff and going through all the courts and everything. He outlined his plan as to how he was going to get rid of all those people who joined in on all of this stuff. That, to me, that should have been the big announcement. The NFT thing, he could have just said, hey, by the way, I wanted to release this and I'm raising money through this thing. You can get a non-fungible token or whatever, however he announced it. And he could have done it that way. But instead, the media glommed onto that because that's what he called his big announcement. If he hadn't used that term, big announcement for the NFT, I don't think anybody on the right would have really mattered at that point. And so NFT, by the way, yes, they all the trading cards sold out. 4.5 million was raised. This is according to Buddy over here on Rumble. Let me go ahead and pop that up. And yes, that is true. And they sold out fairly quickly, by the way. But an NFT is a fungible, I think is how it's pronounced, fungible token. It is a digital thing that you can buy, and I don't even know. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm not even 100% certain that is it turns into something tangible like that you can touch and feel. I think it's just a digital thing that you carry around or whatever. Outlaw Dogs says that it's a token that only has a certain number of them and are kept in a blockchain. Well, the blockchain is the certification, the verification, and the encryption apparently with it. I'll be honest, that's one part of IT that I'm probably not involved in, mainly because it's just not something that I'm necessarily interested in. But again, I love Trump. I think Trump should be the next president. I think everybody else should stay out of his way. I think Ron DeSantis is smart enough to stay out of his way. But the thing about it is that he goes and he just sort of steps in it every once in a while, and that's just Trump being Trump, unfortunately. And thankfully he did it this early. So by the time, the 2024 election comes around, maybe he'll be back on his game. And apparently they had, 3 Chevy also reminded me that there were other prizes that you can also get, like, and I can't remember, but I think one of them was like dinner with him or something like that, that kind of stuff. So there were other things, not just the digital trading cards, but there were other things that were involved as well. So that's cool. Anyway, all right. Oh, so I see some bot has dropped into my chat over on YouTube and is dropping a whole bunch of hot girl pics links. I'm gonna have to get rid of all those. Anyway, there was some golf at Mar-a-Lago, things like that. Music Man, you're right. It is keeping his name in the news, but just like, Hollywood types always seem to believe that the as long as you keep your name in the news, it doesn't matter what it's for, but as long as your name is in the news, it's always at the front of somebody's mind. And apparently, that just seems to be the thing. But I'm not entirely sold on that. I think there's a lot of middle of the road voters that Trump is really going to need when it comes to 2024. And, stuff like that is not necessarily going to bring them over to his side, to be honest with you. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, so, Buddy Weiser says that it's a smart way to donate to Trump. I guess so. I don't know if they fall under FEC, Federal Elections Commission law or not. I mean, I don't know. It's just maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know, but it just seems a little weird to me. But anyway, it's fine. He did it. It's pretty much over with. And by the time the cycle comes back around, in 2024, hopefully this will be far from the minds of the media and the American people. Since, let's face it, the majority of the American people, especially people who vote Democrat, can only remember 30 days or so, maybe 3 months at the most. Anyway, all right. Okay, so I do have to go back because there was a comment back here. Jay Ryberzik, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, said that he took a look around and actually found that I am correct, that the state laws have changed. The yelling fire in the theater doesn't actually, do anything. It's the resulting chaos and the possible deaths and everything else. So I just wanted to call that out. Thank you for correcting yourself. I was fairly certain, but I could be wrong. I'm a human. Now, so, okay. Jay, I'll get to that question here in just a little bit. Okay, so the next big thing that happened that I don't think a lot of people really understood or really saw was the fact that the U.S. government released a new set of records that were directly involved with the JFK assassination. Now, if you recall, JFK was assassinated in Dallas, and I don't remember the exact date. I think it was sometime around this time. But he was in 1960. Was it 1965, 1969? I don't remember. Anyway, he was assassinated in Dallas. That's one thing I'm kind of bad at, is the date. But he was assassinated in Dallas, and the working theory that the Warren Commission, of course, said yes and concluded. The working theory was that it was a single person lone shooter named Lee Harvey Oswald from the Texas Book Repository at the top floor. And yes, it was in 1963. Thank you. Thank you for, of course, my mature audience who can remember that. Sorry, guys. Anyway, So they released more of the documents. Now, the Warren Commission, concluded that, Oswald killed JFK, Jack Ruby killed Oswald, and that the matter was pretty much over at that point. But there's been a lot of conspiracy theories and a bunch of theories that are running around about this. And yes, buddy, you are correct. Vintage is the proper term. So there are a lot of conspiracy theories and stuff that are running around about it. Now, the funny thing is, and a lot of people don't know this, but back in 2017, Trump actually released some documents as well with regards to this. And the reason being is because after a certain period of time, they basically become null and void. There's nothing that anything can be done about them. They're declassified, et cetera, et cetera. But something came out with Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson, and I'll just pop this up because I want to show you this. So this particular article is talking about how the U.S. government released the new set. But the thing about it is there are some records that are still being withheld. And those records, ironically, have to deal with the some of the CIA's information and that kind of stuff. So they are holding back still some information about JFK's assassination. And by them doing this, of course, that just fuels a little bit more of the fire, let's say, for the conspiracy theorists and so on and so forth. I want you to take note, though, in this article in particular that, okay, maybe it's not this article that has it, but I want you to take note in particular that in one of the articles that I was reading about this, and I've included this in there, is the fact that Joe Biden, oh, here it is right here. So the U.S. National Archives on December 15th released 13,173 files online under the direction of President Joe Biden. Now, why is that a key thing? I want you to think about this for just a second. I'll tie this back in for you in just a moment, okay? Keep in mind, so Trump released some of the documents in 2017. Now Biden's released a series of documents in 2022, okay? Just hang on to that for just a second. I'll tie it here in just a second. But Tucker Carlson on his broadcast or on his show was able to somehow get an insider in the CIA to talk about it. And the question, and I didn't see the broadcast, but I'm sure you can find it. I'll bet it's out there all over the place. But the CIA apparently wrote a note to Biden asking that some of the files not be released. Okay. And the other thing that Tucker Carlson brought out in his broadcast was that he said that his team contacted someone who had access to those still hidden files, and that they asked that person specifically who had a great cause to know and direct knowledge of what was in the documents. In other words, the question was asked, did the CIA have a hand in the murder of John F. Kennedy? The response is what is the bombshell. That person responded back and said, the answer is yes. I believe they were involved. It was a whole different country from what we thought it was. It's all fake, the person said. Now, Tucker Carlson noted that if it is true, it means that you have a CIA that is totally beyond the democratically elected government. So much so that it's not held responsible for any involvement in the murder of a president. Carlson said that that meant the former directors of the CIA, including Mike Pompeo and John Brennan, would have known this. He said they asked Pompeo to be on the show, but he refused to come on the show. And one of the reactions to his report was Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who had some words for what he thought about the CIA. Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the nephew of JFK. And the tweet read, "The most courageous newscast in 60 years. The CIA's murder of my uncle was a successful coup d'etat from which our democracy has never recovered." Okay, so, all right, let's just, I mean, this is seriously questionable. I mean, in terms of, you know, what happened with JFK. We all know that there was a lot of tension. Any historical people will know that there was a lot of tension between JFK and the CIA in particular. We also know that there were a lot of people in government who were not happy about the way JFK was handling and dealing with, you know, things like the MLK and some of the civil rights movement and so on and so forth. So the thing is that this is another piece to the puzzle. Now, the question has been floated in the chat here, whether or not this is actually a distraction from the fact that Hunter Biden and the whole Twitter thing. And I'll be honest with you, I can see where some people would jump on this and try to be that way, but not here. I think it is a great disservice to lose sight of the fact of what's happening today at the expense of the past. Yes, I do think that there is relevancy in going after what's after the past, but not so much to give up the moment of the present. Okay. I sound a little bit like Obi-Wan in Star Wars when he talks about be mindful of the present, but not or be aware of the future, but not at the expense of the moment. And honestly, I think that anybody that gloms onto this is really just asking to be sucked away from the real story, which is the Twitter files and the fact that Twitter and Facebook and Google and all of those others suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story in order to make sure that voters did not vote for Donald Trump and did not get the correct assumption that Biden and the Biden family were involved in some sort of a nefarious dealings or influence peddling in particular. We all knew that Hunter was a coke addict and a sex addict and everything else. We all knew that. At least, you know, anyone who might have been around him did. But to add to that, that all of his business dealings and everything else were so questionable in terms of being registered as a foreign agent and all of these other things. I mean, I cannot see that anyone would really go and divert their attention to this, even though this should be uncovered and taken care of realistically. But the other thing out of this is twofold. I've got two thoughts that came out of talking about this, and go with me on this one. Okay. So first of all, the first thought that I had is, oh my gosh, full on government corruption has been around since at least the 1960s. Okay. Well, that sort of shatters all of my youthful dreams and thinking about how, you know, government just did the right thing all the time. But the other thing that came out of this is, hey, wait a minute. Trump's being accused of taking classified documents to Mar-a-Lago and not declassifying them. And the proposal that has been put out by many people on the right is the fact that the president and the president alone has the authority to declassify documents. That he doesn't, he in this particular case, she eventually maybe, doesn't have to go through any kind of a process in order to do it. There is no process to do it. That all the president has to do is just basically say, well, this is declassified. Did you notice that in those two stories dealing with and what I was talking about, especially with Biden, that Biden declassified a lot of these documents in his mind through executive order. So he did it his way. How are they going to go after Trump for declassifying or not declassifying documents that were down at Mar-a-Lago when Biden himself just declassified a whole bunch of stuff and had to do it? As well as Trump declassifying documents about JFK back in 2017. Just saying. Just saying. You know, Buddy says, hey, it's 100% total fake charges about those documents. You're right. It is. It is. I agree. But the thing about it is that Trump declassified documents in 2017 when he was president. Biden declassified documents now. Clinton took home tapes and had them in his sock drawer. Obama still has pages and pages and pages of documents that I don't even think anybody's cataloged yet. Fully cataloged yet. They're not going after them. They're only going after Trump. It's kind of interesting, especially considering the fact that, you know, again, the president is the only one who can declassify documents. Anyway. All right. Okay. So, very, very quickly, because I see I'm running out of time here. I want to get to the question of the week. But very, very quickly, Maricopa County and the Kari Lake thing. Maricopa County filed a motion this week to dismiss Kari Lake's lawsuit. And then right after that, or right along the same time as that, Kari Lake apparently has reportedly won a partial victory in that lawsuit. The partial victory being that her and her lawyers are allowed to do a partial ballot inspection, meaning there's 50. They're going to randomly grab 50 ballots, and the Kari Lake team is going to be allowed to inspect them for issues and so on and so forth. Now, one thing you have to take in note here is that Kari Lake supposedly lost by just 0.7% of the total vote, which roughly estimates to be around 17,000 votes. Okay. However, this article popped in the Just the News. This is hilarious. I'm sorry. This is hilarious. This article popped in Just the News, and it says that apparently top Maricopa election offices couldn't reconcile 15,000 disparity in outstanding votes based off of an internal email. And it says that they are unable to currently reconcile the Secretary of State listing with our estimates from yesterday. This is Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richter wrote in a November 10th email. Folks, this is going to be interesting. The governor's race in Arizona was decided by a margin of just over 17,000 votes. Maricopa County was plagued with numerous issues from the ballot machines at many of its vote centers on Election Day, resulting in delays and long lines. Prior to a Maricopa County press conference with the Board of Supervisor Chair Bill Gates, not that Bill Gates, and Recorder Stephen Richter on November 10th, Richter was sent an email to the not that he was sent, he sent it to Elections Director Scott Jarrett, Gates, and others about a significant discrepancy between the county's estimated remaining ballot totals and the number reported by the Secretary of State's office. Okay. So Arizona Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, and I've advocated for this. I'm going to tell you that right now. She should have stepped aside. I don't care if it was legal. I don't care if it was legal for her to cover it. Ethically speaking, and to avoid all of this bullshit, pardon my French, she should have stepped aside. She should have just said, if she had any ounce of integrity when she was picked as the Democrat representative to run for the governor's office, she should have immediately said, I can't in good conscience oversee a state-run election where I am a participant. I am stepping aside. I am allowing my, assistant, whatever, to take over. That's what she should have done. And anyone with integrity would have handled it that way. But she did not. She decided to stay in place. And so just the mere appearance of impropriety is a big problem. And then you have crap like this where you have, 15,000, 16,000 that come on. All right. So anyway, the point being is that this is going to be a trial to watch also, to kind of keep in mind with what's going on. All right. Let me go ahead and take a second. Let me get a drink. This is good. I wonder what a full bottle actually costs. I'm going to have to see if I can find that. That's some good stuff. All right. Okay. So let me take a second. Actually, let me go ahead and move on to my tonight's question for whiskey. And tonight's question for whiskey, of course, was given to me by Buddy Weiser. Now, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be honest with you, Buddy has been after me to discuss this. For quite some time, he's suggested that I go over this. So I finally am popping on. And you're right, Jay. Democrats do have no integrity. You are correct. Okay. So the question comes, please define the term plausible deniability and how it may come into play in regards to Joe Biden and the Twitter files. By the way, shout out to Sassy Pants. Sassy Pants was my pet of the week on Wednesday, given up by Dawn Dayberry 3 over on Rumble. Anyway, okay, so what is plausible deniability? All right. Plausible deniability actually has a bit of a history. The term itself was first coined when the Church Committee, a committee that was part of the U.S. Senate, kind of like the Warren Commission, was investigating U.S. intelligence agencies during the 1970s. And the whole idea here now, and the committee or the commission found that the CIA had carried out a plot to try and assassinate Cuban leader Fidel Castro. Okay. And the Church Committee believed that the president, obviously, was supportive of the action. However, the president was able to, quote, plausibly deny any knowledge of that plot against Castro, since he truly had no knowledge of specifics of the plan. And this is where it first came into effect. Now, the whole idea of plausible deniability is essentially this. When you question a person or when you talk to a person about something, some major event that happens, if that person can not recall specific details about the event and only knows things in generality, that you would consider that person, that it would be plausible to say that person really doesn't have any specific firsthand knowledge, and therefore their ability or being accused of being a part of that plot is essentially, they can deny being a part of it, and their denial would essentially be, it's likely that they probably don't have firsthand knowledge of this. Now, the thing about plausible deniability when it comes to things like presidents and leaders, state leaders and stuff, they tend to get told that they have to maintain a certain distance from certain projects that the government might be involved in. And so you may see it enhanced in terms of Hollywood types, where it's like, well, President, I don't want to give you the details because then we take away your plausible deniability. The reason for that, obviously, is to keep the president or whoever, the Secretary of State, whatever, in the dark on some of the details, is the fact that they can go into court and they can basically just say, well, yeah, I heard about it, but you know what? I really don't know any of the details, and therefore, I can't get charged in this particular case. So plausible deniability itself makes the denial and lack evidence thereof of their knowledge and understanding of it, causes it that the denial itself is potentially it's credible. Okay. Now the key, I went to a couple of different sites to look this up, and one of the things that one of the places that I went is U.S. Legal. Let me go ahead and show this to you. So this is on U.S. Legal's website, and apparently plausible deniability based off of a law and legal definition. So plausible deniability refers to circumstances where a denial of responsibility or knowledge of wrongdoing cannot be proved as true or untrue due to a lack of evidence proving the allegation. This term is often used in reference to situations where high-ranking officials deny responsibility for or knowledge of wrongdoing by lower-ranking officials. In those situations, officials can plausibly deny the allegation, even though the allegation may be true. It also refers to any act that leaves little or no evidence of wrongdoing or abuse. Okay. So we kind of have this whole idea, and I actually have one other place where they were talking about some examples and stuff like that. The whole point here is that it's essentially there's not enough evidence to prove the situation, but there's also not enough evidence to necessarily say that person didn't do it either. It's kind of like pleading no contest in court. You don't claim that you're guilty, but you also realize that you're going to lose if you try to take it to trial. In terms of being able to talk about this in terms of Joe Biden, Joe Biden in particular with the Hunter Biden laptop, I think would have difficulty applying the idea of plausible deniability. The reason that I say that is because we actually have, and it's been played, it's out there, a voicemail from Joe Biden to Hunter Biden where he talks about Hunter Biden being in the clear. Now, the specific item that they're talking about is a news story, the New York Post story, presumably, but a news story that was coming out about Hunter Biden's activities and everything else. I don't necessarily believe that with that particular piece of evidence that they wouldn't be able to say, look, Joe had an inkling. When you add that with the Tony Bobolinsky testimony where he says that, yes, Joe was absolutely the big guy. He was supposed to be, the 10%. We met with so on and so forth at whatever time. I think there's enough evidence to basically make plausible deniability go away in the case of the Hunter Biden laptop and Joe's involvement with Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden's business dealings. Okay. With the Twitter files, there's a couple of places where plausible deniability might show up. And one of them would be with Jack Dorsey, as an example. Jack Dorsey, who was the head of Twitter at the time all of the Twitter files came out, was the whole thing where, Jack may not have known about the interaction between the lower level people like Yoel Roth and Vijay Gotti, to be able to, he could, in theory, plausibly deny that he knew the level and depths of what was going on. So he could possibly skate on that. He can't absolve himself completely about knowledge because there are emails from him. There's, things in Slack channels and stuff like that. There are communications where he had an idea where he was questioning about what was going on. However, at the same time, though, he may not necessarily be convicted of or be guilty of understanding the entire depth and breadth of the integration between the FBI and Twitter. So he could possibly, get away with it. Same thing goes on the opposite side with the FBI and somebody like James Comey or Director Wray, whoever was in charge at the time. And honestly, I don't necessarily recall, but whoever might have been in charge at the time that this was going on, the director may be able to claim plausible deniability, again, to the idea outside of the fact that he created or took on or carried forward the election, the 80 agents doing the election misinformation investigations and stuff. So there is a possibility of these higher up folks getting away with not being charged completely. But whether or not that actually does anything, I don't know. But that's kind of the idea of the plausible deniability. Same thing goes with like Richard Nixon. He had a level of plausible deniability because of the fact that he may have known about the break-in, but he may not have known all of the details about it. Now, Nixon did the honorable thing and said, you know what, I have too much respect for the office. I'm just going to go ahead and resign. He did that, of course, to save face and save his own skin because he didn't want to be impeached and indicted. But that being said, he possibly could have had the idea of plausible deniability with that particular case. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That is incredible. Hopefully I answered your question. I do appreciate that. Hey, if you have a question that you want me to address on the program on Saturday nights, do me a favor. Drop me a line. Go to fans, F-A-N-S. That's Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra, for those of you who spell things phonetically. Fans at whiskeymusings.online. You can drop me a line there. You can also do that for the Pet of the Week as well. As of right now, I do not have any further questions for whiskey, but I do have a couple of Pet of the Weeks that are there. So Pet of the Week I'm good on for the next couple of episodes or next few weeks. But questions for whiskey I am all out of. And yes, buddy, absolutely, you are welcome. All right, so I've got... I'm going to go over a little bit. I hope you bear with me. Stay with me here. I've got a couple of other real short articles, just some comments about a couple of things that have popped that I think are really, really important. The first one here has to deal with the California has decided that they want, and this is Governor Slick Newsom, hair gel Newsom. He apparently has decided that California's government should go ahead and pay out reparations for slavery. And apparently he's got this commission put up, and all these people have been coming in to try and come up with a solution, a consensus on how this should be passed out. Now, this article comes from PJ Media, and apparently there was an individual there who said that every black resident of California should get $350,000. It was a black businessman who brought that up. I am just going to simply state unequivocally this. Anyone who has lived their entire life in America, okay, has never owned slaves and has never been a slave who is alive today. Okay. anyone who has lived in America all of their life and is alive today has either never owned slaves or never been a slave under the legal definition. Now, somebody who's here illegally or something like that, there could be some potential stuff there. But the fact of the matter is, slavery ended in the late 1800s, people. We are now in the beginnings of the 2000s. There is absolutely no way that anyone should first receive any kind of reparation for this, nor be the payee of any kind of reparation. And the reason why I say this is simply this. My ancestors, and I can at least part of my family tree, I can trace back to when they arrived here in the early 1900s. Okay. My family, as far as I am aware, never owned slaves here in America. Now, it could go back a lot farther than that, sure. And potentially, I mean, slavery was commonplace everywhere prior to Great Britain and us eliminating it. But the key here is, folks, there's no basis, no logical basis to do any of this at all. There's not a single person who has lived their entire life in America who has been either a slave or been a slave owner. It just flat out isn't happening. Okay. And so to go back and to try and do something like this is absolutely ridiculous. I personally hope it doesn't happen. Or if it does happen, I personally hope it bankrupts California. Just totally bankrupts them. Okay. A couple of people have noticed in the chat that they actually fought for the North, which was the people who freed the slaves. And so, yeah, how are you going to sit here and figure out not only who gets it, but who pays for it? Because I'm sure there's people who have immigrated here since slavery was abolished in America who have, ancestors and stuff here who don't have anything to do with slavery in America, who are probably going to have to pay for this crap. I mean, seriously, this is ridiculous. This is pandering to a specific crowd to try and get people to, vote for them and everything else. This is obvious, completely obvious on that. Now, there is some good news in terms of the whole, trying to corner people in terms of race or sexual orientation or whatever. This popped in the New York Post. Oberlin College makes their $36 million payment to the bakery in a racial profiling defamation case. For a real quick read, there was apparently somebody made a false claim and false accusation against the bakery. This bakery is just off of the college campus. They made a false claim that the bakery itself was it had like some racist incident happened, and the college immediately based off of that, rather than investigating it and finding out that it was false, but they went ahead and like banned people from going there or something along those lines. But anyway, it went to court, and the Gibson Bakery won in court, basically because of the defamation that the college did in terms of announcing that the bakery should be off limits and so on and so forth. Anyway, so we are, times like these, we are winning. We are winning on some of this. This popped in Breitbart, which I thought it was interesting, it kind of goes with the whole idea of replacing the Great Reset and Great Replacement theory. That, Senator Dick Durbin has talked about. I think I played his video on one of my broadcasts. I know Dan Bongino has. But apparently Biden's State Department has now teamed up with multinational corporations to funnel refugees into American jobs. I mean, it's not like we don't have a job problem here in the U.S. already. Seriously, the Biden administration, this is the most anti-American administration, I think, overtly, let me rephrase that, overtly anti-American administration that we have seen in modern history. Somebody could make the argument that the Obama administration was definitely anti-American, but I don't think they were as overt about it. But yeah, I mean, they're just basically, they're trying to like get rid of Americans and make Americans, you know, take the back seat to all of these other foreign nationals. And that's pretty much what it is. But apparently, I guess, President Joe Biden partnered with hundreds of multinational corporations to open up a jobs program for refugees arriving in the United States as the nation's labor force participation rate remains at historical lows. Okay. This guy, I'm sorry, every time he talks about making America, you know, making American a strong America and strong economy and everything else, this guy lies. I really wish that he had Pinocchio's problem, where every time he lied, it would extend his nose, or even better, be like Jim Carrey's Liar, Liar, where he had no other choice but to say, tell the truth, because this just, I mean, this guy's as anti-American, I think, as I've seen. And the sad part about it is he is like supposedly from the old guard of Democrats. Anyway. Oh, what a mess. All right. So I need to address, I did say to Amy Jean Viner, I did say, I wanted to announce, or wanted to address her question. She did have a question in regards to my state here, my home state in Washington. Yes, there is a report that there is talk of a tax where it would be a per mile driven tax. There has been talk about that for, oh gosh, probably 10 years now. And unfortunately, my governor and my legislature is left wing, so far left wing, especially the governor in terms of his whole climate change agenda, that it wouldn't surprise me any if they go ahead and they tried to put it in. You know, and again, they've been trying to go after us. I mean, they tax us like crazy on gas anyway. I mean, we had a 9.5-cent gas tax that was supposed to go directly to bridges and roads and infrastructure, and it went nowhere. I mean, I don't know of any project that was fully funded by that 9.5-cent gas tax. So yes, it's being talked about. Honestly, I haven't checked into it. I don't know what to say, basically what it is, but they've been talking about how they are going to collect the miles driven based off of, you know, a transponder that's put in your vehicle. And that transponder would then record how far you've gone. You know, you would have to have your car rigged up with this thing in order to get a miles driven tax running. And yes, it is a gas tax. It is a usage tax. The idea here is to make it so that people stop driving and take public transportation. They have been after that for 40, 50 years now. The public transportation is a absolute horrendous, unless you're in the downtown core. Everywhere else, it is horrendous. You cannot get from point A to point B, even just transferring cities from like Bellevue to Seattle. If you're not on one singular bus line, it is near impossible. Just to give you an example, I took a look to see if I would actually, one, save money, and two, save time to travel where I live into Seattle, to get anything when it came to when it came to my job, when I was doing that, not working remotely. And the fact of the matter is, it would have taken me 4 hours just one way to actually get to my work. And even with the best times, I would have arrived at work about an hour after I was supposed to start. And on the return trip, it would have taken me 4 hours to get back home in terms of taking public transportation. Now, granted, I live, you know, roughly 60, 70 miles from the city. But that being said, it was almost impossible. I mean, we have a train that runs from Everett to Seattle, and that train that runs from Everett to Seattle, which would normally take about 30 minutes, to get there. Even in some horrendous traffic, it would take, 35, 40 minutes. It takes, because of all the stops in between, it takes about 50 minutes to get from Everett to Seattle. And the thing about it is they put that in with the idea of alleviating traffic. And what it ended up doing is they only run the train once a day, once in the morning, as an example. And when they do run it, you're arriving in downtown half an hour after normal start times. So in other words, the train itself drops you off at the train station. You still have to catch a bus or walk to your next destination. And you get dropped off at 8:30 in the morning when most people start work at 8 o'clock. These people around here, they're just complete and utter incompetent. God, I can't even say what I want to say because this is public. But their incompetency is amazing to me as to why this stuff is happening. So, yes, it's probably going to be on the ballot or something somewhere. I'm sure I'm going to have to look into it now that you've brought my attention to it. But yes, they have been trying for that for probably close to a decade, I think, as far as that goes. All right. So that is it for me for the evening. That was my final Whiskey Musings thought. Do me a favor. If you like what I do, if you like the content that I bring, head on over to one of my outlets. In particular, head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account, and subscribe. I'm sitting at 450. I'd like to get higher than that. I would love to see 500, within the next quarter of next year, let's say. And also, to keep things, I will be transmitting on Wednesday, okay? But next Saturday night is Christmas Eve, and so I'll be taking that off. So I will have Wednesday's broadcast, and then you won't see me again until a week from Wednesday, okay? So Christmas Eve, I'm taking off. I'm also thinking about doing a long program, and by long, I mean a 3-hour long program, starting to transmit at 6 p.m. on New Year's Eve, just like I normally do, but going all the way up to midnight Eastern Time. So that would be 3-hour program, midnight Eastern Time on New Year's Eve. I'm looking at that. I'll have more details on that and in the coming episodes. Otherwise, do me a favor if you get a chance, get a chance to say hello to your family and friends and everything. Enjoy the holidays. If I don't see you or talk to you before then, and we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.